And with that, we should probably move into our final review. My gosh, much later than expected, but still worth hearing. Andy, take it away.
The Whale. So this is the latest film from Darren Aronofsky, best known for Requiem for a Dream and Black Swan. His last film was Mother, which I think only I have seen. Kind of a crazy film. It hasn't made anything in like 5-6 years. So this is his first film. This is based on the play by Samuel D. Hunter, and this film is very play-like. It all takes place in one person's apartment, basically, starring the great Brendan Fraser, who we've heard so much about as Charlie, a 600-pound man he's an English teacher. He teaches a course online. He is essentially slowly dying, and he kind of knows he doesn't have a lot of time left, and he wants to try to make some things right with his estranged daughter, played by Sadie Sink, of Stranger Things fame. And she's anything but charming in this. She's so mean in this movie. The film also, this is a very small cast. There's only like 7 people in this film. Also starring Hong Chow as Liz, who is not his nurse. She is a nurse and a good friend of his. She comes to check up on Charlie every day. She brings him food, and she's the one who kind of says like, your heart's failing, and you probably aren't going to last the month, the week. And that's kind of our setup. So he's a man confined to his apartment, largely confined to his couch, and who's trying to make things right with some people in his life before the end. So that's our setup. Incredible performance by Brendan Fraser, which we'll get into more. Zach, what'd you think?
So I didn't really know what to get into in The Whale. Andy and I are both big fans of A24. Anybody who's hosting a freaking movie podcast is. And we knew it was from them, but we hadn't really seen a trailer. And we knew it was Darren Aronofsky, but we hadn't really seen much from it. And they released like one still and like nothing leading up to it, like a teaser where you don't really see anything. And it was like, what's the deal? And then early screenings started to say this movie's fat phobic. This movie's got problems. And I was like, what's happening? Like, why aren't we seeing anything? So finally we get a full trailer. I watch it. Andy did not. And I got excited for it. I was like, okay, I think this will be something good. And ultimately, I'm pleased to say that The Whale is something special. Like, it definitely is. I think just like a lot of Darren Aronofsky's features are. Because it explores an emotional place that like not many movies dare to go, which is somebody not only suffering from like a horrible addiction that is killing them, but that addiction be eating. Like, and it's not somebody who's like anorexic and doesn't want to eat like Christian Bale and The Machinist. It's quite the opposite. It's somebody who feels compelled and can't not. And like, I think that's really fascinating. I do think in times it's excessive, especially with its open. The Whale is a pretty stark opening. Watch out. But I think it's able to do a lot with a really effective script adapted from a play that functionally all takes place in the same place. Because, you know, like in a play, you've got one stage and it's probably fixed up to be Charlie's apartment, which is where pretty much everything happens in this movie. So for 2 hours, that can be tough to entertain an audience, keep people hooked. And at times it does start to feel slow. But ultimately, like, I think it's actually maybe a really kind of special journey that Aronofsky's taking us on here. And I think he does a really great job adapting something that's already pretty notable.
Yeah, I was really surprised because again, it's not very cinematic in a lot of ways. It's very much like watching a play. You get the kind of thing where side characters are like, oh, well, when Charlie backstory. A lot of things like that are told via dialogue, which would normally you would just see a flashback or see it portrayed on screen. So it has that very play-like feel. But it's a very profound movie. It's about loss because his being so overweight is it's a big part of him, but it's really a small part of the overall film. It's him trying to make things right. It's about everyone in the film is trying to save someone else, which is an interesting dynamic. His Liz, his nurse and friend, is trying to save him. He is trying to save his relationship with his daughter. There's a missionary character played by Ty Simpkins who's trying to save Charlie's soul at the end of his life. And there's a lot of that kind of dynamic, and Yeah, it's a really profound piece of literature, and it's been adapted really well for the screen.
Andy's right. It's a small cast. I think in total it's 7 people. When the credits actually roll, I think IMDb credits are 7 or like 6 and then plus 1 on the side because it's a pretty small performance. But um, this movie like does so much with the people it has. Like rather than get out in the world and add context like through visuals, for the most part you're locked in. Like you don't even really get much of in the way of like flashbacks. You will have scenes when characters are kind of monologuing, explaining like their past or a contextual like reason for why they do something that they do in the film, why a certain decision is made, why they feel a certain way, why Charlie left his daughter, right? Like and his reasons for doing that, why he eats and why he seemingly can't stop, why he won't go to a hospital, or examples just from our lead. But like Andy said, it seems like everybody in this movie is trying to save somebody else. Everybody is motivated to help. Everybody is motivated to do the right thing. And what's interesting is Charlie is just trying to show that to the few people that he can that interact with him, that people are truly amazing and like are capable of really amazing selfless acts. But you get that through honesty and through being genuine and being candid, even if sometimes that's an ugly truth. A big part of the way this is expressed is through Charlie's work. He is a online adjunct professor at a university, and he tells his students that his camera's broken. So when he's hosting classes, that's how he gets paid. That's his paycheck. That's what he does. And he's a writing professor, reads and writes essays. His camera's off and he's just kind of this like black darkness in on the screen that his students are wonder what's going on here. And it's quite interesting for him to be so disingenuous like with people he's instructing, but also try to feel like, hey, I need to reach out to my daughter who I functionally abandoned and don't spend time with because suddenly I don't have much time left. And he seems to be at peace with that. And I think that's a really interesting like line for Fraser to walk, especially being the lead in a really challenging role, I think. And Fraser does a really great job of spearheading that and setting the tone, I think, for other people in the film. And that's only picked up and run with by our cast. Ty Simpkins is tremendous as this kind of missionary character who's really, really small, but ends up kind of being a bigger part of the things. His daughter, Sadie Sink, is vicious. God, she's so mean to him. She's so mean. Oh my god. Oh my god, she's mean to him. And Hong Chow might be a dude. Might be the breakaway for me in this movie. Like I liked her fine in The Menu, and I know she's getting some more casting, and she's on the come up. But dude, she's so good in this movie. Oh my god, like she is excellent as Liz.
Yeah,
As
like
kind of like friend and caretaker.
yeah, like all we've heard is about Brendan Fraser and his performance in this because he's the main person, but like Hong Chow also bringing some incredible work and performance to this as well. I think she should definitely get like a supporting actress nomination. We'll see how that happens. Let's talk about this big performance by Brendan Fraser that everyone's been talking about because we've been hearing about this for months. I didn't know what this movie was about, but everyone had been talking about the his performance. So he is playing a 600-pound man and he's wearing a big bodysuit, fat suit. And he has to, there's a lot of emotional scenes, but he also just has to embody the struggle of what that is. He spends most of the time on his couch. He cannot really walk anywhere without a ton of effort. He has a walker to help him get around, but it's, like a Herculean effort to go from room to room. His bathroom and things have been modified for his size, and you just see him like he's got to rock and kind of get some momentum going to get himself up, and it's the physicality of the performance is really incredible.
Yeah, and it's not only the physicality, but also like the general design around Charlie's ability to move and engage. Like Charlie cannot turn his head. It's almost like what, like old Michael Keaton in like '89 Batman. Like can't turn his head much. Like, he's pretty much locked like into place. Um, his character is often like dollied around. That happens a few times in the movie, like just a big wide dolly shot all the way around him, like it's orbiting him, like it's like and he's got a ton of sound design around Charlie, lots of like grunts and groans and wheezing and like breathing and smacking when he's eating, like just like all of that, I think contributes to a design that I think a fair number of people are offended by, and maybe rightfully so. But I do think it's stark in its presentation, and I think it's not necessarily a bad thing. I love the way Charlie's eating is handled. Like Aronofsky handles it like it's a dark thing, it's a bad thing, and it's a weird thing, like eating disorders, right? Especially overeating, because you can't ignore it. It's not like alcoholism is of course a challenge, but like you could move to a dry county. You could try to avoid it, but eating, like, you got to stick your hand in that cage 3 times a day. You don't have a choice. Like, so watching Charlie try to have self-control while also like things spiral rapidly out of control for him creates a lot of like dramatic tension for Fraser to play with, and he does a fantastic job. He's just got these like of everything. I think Fraser's got the soft face, and he's got these like striking blue eyes. It's what Nolan said he liked about Cillian Murphy so much, like the striking blue eyes, and he's got it. And like he's just often got this kind of wide-eyed look at the world that is so not reflected in his like broken down apartment that is like dusty and smells terrible.
Well,
It's not somewhere people want to spend time.
yeah, it's important to point out, like, he's not just a big guy because the author wanted to make him a 600-pound man. He wasn't always that big or that heavy. This is a result of depression and mental health breakdown of loss. Essentially, he's has lost someone very dear to him throughout his life, and that's part of the reason he is this big. And that's why, like, I think the bigness is handled really well, because it's not like, oh, like, he's fat and gross. It's no, he is this way because he is self-destructing because of all these things in his life. Aronofsky's work often deals with the idea of self-destruction. Requiem for a Dream is about hard drugs and drug addiction. You have something like Black Swan or The Fountain. All these movies deal with people being their own doom, and this movie is the same. He is literally eating himself to death, and Liz tries to say, let's take you to a hospital, let's call 911. He's like, no, I'm not going. I'm not moving from this couch. And he has
Right.
excuses for why not, but it's essentially like he is ready to die. He wants to die.
Yeah. I think one of the things that really makes this movie work for its 2-hour runtime, despite being stuck in mostly the same place, is its ability to perpetuate like mystery through our characters. Questions like, yeah, what happened to Charlie to get him to be like this? Who was this person that passed away? Why did he leave his family? Why doesn't his daughter talk to him? Why is she flunking school? Who's this missionary character? What's his deal? Yeah, why is Liz taking care of Charlie? But it's not like her job. She seems to be doing it like for fun or as a hobby. Like, she's not paid. Like, why is that? What's the deal? Why isn't he going to a hospital? Like, The Whale presents like a series of questions, and over the course of the film you get the satisfaction of seeing all of these things resolved in one way or another, for better or worse. And like that creates a lot of, I think, tension that keeps you tuned in for the runtime. It does drag in the middle a little bit. Andy and I both were surprised to see it was 2 hours. Remember when we found that? I was like, oh god, I thought this was gonna be a tight 90 minutes. But for what it's worth, like, I don't think it's time wasted. I think it's time well spent. But it all takes place pretty much in the same place. I think you got to know that going in. I think you'll have a better experience.
Part of what I wanted to bring up, yeah, you mentioned the missionary character played by Ty Simpkins. He keeps showing up. He's basically shows up once a day to try and witness to Charlie and get him to find religion at the end of his life here. Part of this movie is about religious trauma. I think the church is called New Life or something similar to that.
Yeah.
And every character has some sort of connection, either directly or indirectly, to this church. And it's about the pain of growing up in super religious environment and the kind of the harm that has caused literally everyone in the film. But that's another thing that the movie is also dealing with.
Yeah, like I guess I'm saying like there's a fair number of surprises in the whale that make it work for what it is, but it's overall I think a thought piece. Like it's slower and it's smaller and it's based on a play, and I think that's part of the reason it works so well because it's uniquely humble. It's a small budget movie. I mean, if anything, it's basically a pandemic feature. Like it's something they could have shot. You know, it's a one location shoot like Malcolm and Marie or Steven Soderbergh's Kimmy. But I think what this movie does better than those is somehow manage to still feel big. No pun intended, like while also being like a uniquely small series of subjects. And I'm not quite sure how Aronofsky manages to pull that off. I didn't see Mother, his previous feature. Andy was not a
Mother.
big fan. Yeah. And I know that movie definitely had more people than this movie, but I guess I'm saying like Aronofsky is no stranger to small stories and being able to like pull out the emotion from them, and I think he does that really well in The Whale. Yeah, disparaging fashion at some points. Any other thoughts for recommendations?
Last thing I wanted to touch on is the whale is part of it. It gets its title. This isn't like making fun of his character as much as it's also a reference to Moby Dick, and there's parallels between that story and kind of what's things that are happening in this play as well. So there's something else to watch out for.
Yeah, keep an eye out for it for sure. Andy, would you recommend The Whale?
I would. It's definitely a challenging work, but it's got some of the best things in a movie that I've seen in a long time. Has a really incredible third act. To me, drags a little bit in the middle, but Brendan Fraser's performance is incredible. I think he definitely will probably take the Oscar even over someone like Austin Butler. But really phenomenal. Highly recommend.
Man, you might be right. Yeah, the Whale's really good stuff. I'd recommend it as well. It's not for everybody. Big content warning too. Like I said, this deals heavily with at least one disorder for sure, and a lot of trauma like that's worth mentioning. So if you're maybe not feeling up to it, maybe talk to some friends who've seen it before you take the time. But I think The Whale is uniquely different. I think it's like bold cinema light, right? It's not quite the boldest of bold cinema, but it's definitely different. And if you're looking for something really different at the movies, go check out The Whale. Like you might be surprised at how well it may connect with you. Like you know, you'll have to wait and see. With that, we should probably